Excited to welcome to the screen as a last-minute conversation, Steve Moran and Denise Scott. Here you guys are. Thank you for joining. And Denise, we were just emailing earlier this morning. You were telling me you just came back from Key West.
Yes.
Little we know, I didn't think I'd be asking you to join us today live on screen. So thanks for making it happen. I'm going to leave you guys to talk about your latest research, and then I'll come back in at the end to plug a very important session that Steve and I are on tomorrow. But without further ado, everybody, Denise.
I've already got props for tomorrow's session.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that after Denise shares her latest research. So,
Awesome.
Anybody who ever talks to me about Senior Living Innovation Forum, I describe it as my favorite conference of the year. It's got the right blend of the right people, the right content, and frankly, the right amount of fun. And so this is a substitute for that. I'd rather be in person with all of you, but here we are. And Denise, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it worked out for us.
So, as I've been talking to leaders, anticipating in virtual conferences, one of the things I hear two things over and over again. One, of course, is that occupancy is a huge, huge challenge. Nick recently came out with numbers where it's the lowest it's ever been since they started reporting it in 2006. Second thing is that that we're hearing from these conferences is that resilience is a huge, huge problem. People are just getting exhausted. They are tired of wearing PPE. We heard it from Dwayne Clark and Bob Kramer and Ryan and Tom Grape today that this is a huge problem. And your whole thing, Denise, is really working with teams to help them not survive, but thrive. And so I actually want to start there, and then let's move to the relationship of culture and occupancy.
There's actually research to show that culture has actually improved pre-COVID to now. And the reason why culture has improved, there's more flexibility, there's less hierarchy. And so some of the barriers that would get in the way before, now, because changes were made so quickly, those barriers are gone or were temporarily. And people working in these organizations really like this way of working, not the PPE and not all that other stuff, but this sense of how we work, which is what culture is. Culture is how we work around here. And so this sense of we're working together, there's less silo mentality. I actually call it the greatest shared vision we've ever had in our field. It's not a good one, but this sense of people are working together to keep residents safe, to keep the people that they serve safe, to keep each other and their families at home safe. All of that has just, like I said, eliminated this silo mentality because people are working towards this common vision together. And so culture has actually gotten stronger during this period. Now, the interesting thing will be on the other side of it if that continues, and because people are going to want to see it continue.
So it's interesting because you're almost describing, so on one hand, you've got cultures improving, and on the other side, you have people burning out. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's interesting to see the organizations that sort of struggled before all of this are struggling even more. And the organizations that even with all the staffing going on, staffing crisis, as people call it, in our field going on, the organizations that did pretty well with all those challenges and turnover, was better than average and so forth, that they have fared better through all of this. And certainly that sense of culture, pulling the people together through this. And so that sense of purpose, And so, I see a lot of frustration. I'm in a lot of online groups and with administrators and executive directors and so forth. And I see a lot of frustration, people saying, I'm doing so much for my staff. I'm appreciating them so much. And they still say that they're not appreciated for the work they do. But the mistakes that they're making are really depending on gifts and gift cards and so forth to appreciate people. When in reality, what people want is to feel valued, to recognize the importance of their job. And my gosh, if there's never been a time where people's jobs are more important than right now, I don't know what it is, because people are just, they're so burnt out. They're so tired. I'd say it's kind of like a tank running on empty. And people have just been running on empty, and they need to be refilled and restored. And that includes the administrators and executive directors who feel caught in the middle of everything. They feel caught in the middle of our government coming down on them, on family members yelling at them because they can't visit, on residents who obviously are upset with everything, with staff who are on them from their corporate level. And so they feel like it's coming from all sides. And literally, I see over and over again each day people writing, there's no one, we only have each other, there's no one that supports us. And I think the opportunity for companies to step forward right now and help people through this period, the leaders, so that they can do that then for their team members. We can't give what we don't have. If they're running on empty, they can't help fill someone else's bucket.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I've been seeing is that maybe better than ever before, we're actually doing a really nice job of taking care of frontline staff, but it's the executive directors and the marketing directors who have all this pressure to get new move-ins, and yet they've got all these restrictions, mostly imposed by outside parties, but sometimes by the company. It makes it so difficult. And so if you could give like 3 things that a C-suite, a corporate level person could do to really help their executive director level people to thrive in this environment that doesn't look like it's going to end time soon, what would those 3 things be?
To call your team and ask them what those things could be. So to call and say, thank you for what you've been doing. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for not walking out. I mean, I end every one of my presentations with leaders at that level saying how much I love and appreciate them for not walking away from our field, because many people have, and many people are planning on it. And so to, first of all, thank them for showing up and doing what they've been doing, and asking, how can we as a company support you? And sometimes people are afraid because they think, oh, they're going to ask for more money and they're going to ask for more staff and we can't give them all those things. But typically that's not what happens. Typically it's small things that they might ask for. It might be looking at what are the reports and all the calls and everything else that you're asking for people right now. They have all this extra on them right now from regulation side and from the testing side. Are there things that maybe typically that you've done, reports that you required or calls that you required or whatever, that maybe instead of daily can be a couple times a week, or maybe once a week, or maybe instead of once a week, it's every other week, but to alleviate some of that pressure. I once had an executive director say to me, they felt like a balloon with everyone coming in on them, like pushing them from different sides. And they were just, at one point they said, I'm just going to pop. And I thought that was a great analogy. So I think that sense of calling people and ask is, first of all, thanking them. Then asking them, what can we do from, as a company, as an organization, what can I do as a leader to support you? And then to look at some of the things that might not be necessary right now, given all the other challenges. And it might be that you put a thing on it, up until January 1st, we're going to, make it every other week that we have this call, or, every other week that the report's due. And then January 1st, you revisit it. And say, is it something we want to continue, or is it, going to go back to the way that we were doing it? But just that sense of reaching out.
I really like those suggestions. Talking to our friend Randy Brown, who runs a CCRC in Southern California, and he went to all of his department heads and ask them to just write up a little list of things that they've learned that actually has made their work better since COVID-19 hit. And I've asked him to share that, turn it into an article. I don't know whether we're going to get to do that or not, but I hope so. And I think that just focusing on that positive and the things that have actually gotten better is a huge thing. So I want to shift gears for a minute.
Yep.
You have done some research on the correlation between culture and occupancy. And occupancy has never been more critical than right now. So can you talk a little bit about that research and what you found?
Sure. Well, I identified the research. I wish that I actually did it, but we actually had a real researcher do the hard part and crunch the numbers. But we were working with an organization, one of our clients, JEA, they're based out in Washington, and working with them on sharing the culture score for each of their sites. And as we were doing this, we noticed this connection between the culture score that one of their really thriving sites would have, and then the person who is the VP of sales and marketing was in the room, and she said, oh, their occupancy is always fabulous too. And then there'd be another site where the culture score might be a little bit lower. Sometimes it was a new acquisition or whatever. And she'd say, okay, they're working on their building occupancy too. And about the fourth time that happened, I thought, well, there's a link here. And so working with the Barrett Value Center, who is the third-party research firm we use to measure culture, I reached out to them and I said, can you look at occupancy and culture scores and the connection between the two? And what they found is that organizations that had the strongest culture, their occupancy was 94% compared to sites that had the lowest culture scores whose occupancy was down to 66%. And to measure that culture, and you actually can measure culture, and I didn't know about this until a few years ago. All this time I've spent working in culture, and never knew that this tool existed until a few years ago, and have been introducing it to senior living because it's unbelievable difference it's made in turnover and retention, ability to recruit, and now occupancy. And so what it looks at is the people describe the top 10 values or behaviors that they see in the organization right now. And it looks at what percentage of those are something limiting, something working against the organization. And things like blame come up sometimes, or bullying, or information hoarding, or sometimes even job insecurity, which is crazy considering how much everyone's fighting for staff. But job insecurity will come up sometimes. And organizations might not even know this. And so that's what contributes to lowering a culture score, and things like teamwork and accountability and positivity, and sometimes even humor and fun and caring and compassion raise that culture score. And so we have the ability to actually look at that and compare it on a global level, because it's a global tool that's used throughout different fields and across the world. And so linking it to occupancy is, I think it's the first time it's ever been done, that research linking culture to occupancy.
So the message really is, I think that sometimes people don't, or organizations don't invest in their culture because it feels like this sort of soft skill that is kind of warm and fuzzy, but it doesn't really impact the bottom line. So it'd be nice to have, but you get busy. And what you're really telling us is that investing in culture actually impacts the bottom line in a huge, huge way. So how long does it take to fix a culture?
So, to completely change a culture takes years. So it takes 5 to 7 years. But that being said, there's a big difference that can be made along the way. Like, depending on how much you are willing to address what you need to do. And sometimes it's just doing more of the good stuff. It's not always fixing stuff. But we just had someone that took their culture score and improved it tremendously in just a year, because they focused on coaching and mentoring programs in that year and piloting that in that department, in one department. And that department saw a 5% decrease in that negative culture and energy. It's called culture entropy. cultural entropy, but it really is sort of the energy working against you. It's like the blame, the gossip, and so forth. And they saw a 5% decrease, which was tremendous. They had a good, strong culture score to begin with in just 1 year by focusing on coaching and mentoring, which was something that came out of the culture assessment that their people wanted. And so it was this direct response to it. So you can make a tremendous impact. I mean, we've had organizations, where you mentioned Roundtree. I mean, Roundtree decreased their 90-day turnover 50%, increased their employee referrals 53%. In a year because of the work that they did on culture. We have another organization that decreased their turnover. We presented at NIC last year, actually, for us, and they decreased their turnover 43% in a year. So it can be done, and it's the organizations that are committed to doing something with the information that they find out.
Nice math, Michael.
Wait, I got to get the camera. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Where's mine?
You should have got one, man.
No.
I don't know, man.
Can I show you what I did get? Can I show you what I did get? Because this will lead into where you want to go, I know. Let me show you what I did get. Look at what I got. I'm not even going to bet. I'm going to surprise.
So before we start talking about tomorrow, some great insights there, Denise. Thank you so much. And obviously it is super important. I guess a question for you, 5 to 7 years to really build a strong culture. Seems like quite a long time. A lot of companies don't have that runway to build a culture, to kind of get their culture right. A lot of, companies, 5 to 7 years, they may not be around. So that to me sounds a little discouraging. What do you say to people that say, like, oh man, that's I don't know, I need to get it sorted out in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so I would say that's a complete, that would be a complete culture transformation. And that if you start today working on what's identified, I think people lose a lot of time throwing programs at stuff that they don't understand. So they hear about a great program from the Ritz or Disney, and they say, let me implement that. And their organization is not ready for it. And so it fails. And so they waste a lot of time. The examples I gave you, those people made a tremendous difference in their culture in a year. But they were committed to saying, I'm going to focus on what I need to focus on and not be sidetracked by all these different things that are, come my way that I learn about that might not be the right thing for my organization. So, I mean, if you can decrease your turnover 50% in a year, I mean, that's a tremendous difference. It might not be a complete switch to the culture that you want to get to, but you're moving there at least. I mean, it's like what's that saying about what's the best time to plant an oak tree? If not last year or 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's today. And I feel like the same thing, people do a lot of talking about this, but to start moving on really identifying what needs to get done in their organization and then acting on that specifically would move them that much faster instead of randomly, throwing random approaches at it. So strategic approach, we create actually a strategic culture plan for people, the same that you would have a strategic plan like anything else. Like you would never open a new campus up or start a new service line and just think, oh, it's a great idea. Or, I say to people, your finances, you never say like, well, with my gut, I think my finances were good this month. Or, it feels like our occupancy was pretty good this month. I don't need to look at any data. No, you look at data, you look at numbers, you make decisions with information. And you can do the same with culture and measure it and actually use the data to make informed decisions, which is going to get you there that much faster. So I hope that helps.
Well, that's great again. And, as Steve just said on before, culture is one of those topics that we do see a lot of people saying that, they want to discuss, but it's not an easy one to kind of, cover in a 30 or 20 or 40 minute, or even an hour-long session. But you actually gave some really excellent insights. So thanks. Appreciate that, Denise. So for people that want to learn about your organization, Drive, what is the website?
Cultureoutcomes.com. Culture and then the word outcomes with an S.com.
Okay.